Welcome to Nicole's Tips. In this installment, we'll look at Hanumanasana or splits. My 3 tips for Hanumanasana are stretch and strengthen your hamstrings, stretch and strengthen your hip flexors, and keep your muscles engaged as you stretch into splits or Hanumanasana. So, tip number 1. Stretch and strengthen your hamstrings. You'll need a couple blocks. If you have them on hand, it'd be good to grab. I'm going to start with my blocks at the highest setting. And kneeling on your mat, you'll bring your hands onto your blocks and bring one leg forward. So the blocks just help to ease into this hamstring stretch. You'll also feel a calf down through the calf muscles as well. Now, most important thing here is to find an optimal stretch. But then also, I'm thinking about, in order to find some strength through the hamstrings, I'm think of dragging my heel back toward my pelvis, toward my hips. So find that action of dragging heel toward your hips, and then let it go just a little bit, but keep some of that engagement to your hamstrings. And then one more time, hug heel toward hips. And let go of some of it. And now, for a couple more breaths, you might come down into a little deeper stretch. You can even remove blocks, bring your hands down further, fold. And then coming back up. Regain your blocks if you removed them. And you'll switch sides, tucking right leg back, bring left leg forward. And you do the same thing. So, you're just pausing here, taking a few breaths, stretching. So we're stretching and lengthening here, but we're also gonna do some actions to find some strength too. So thinking of dragging your left heel toward your left hip. And then let go of some of that and keep some muscular engagement, but feel a little bit more length come into the hamstrings. Good. And then do that one more time, drag heel toward hip. Let go of some of that, let it lengthen a little bit more. And again, you could flip the blocks down a level or two, bring your hands down, fold down further. We're just gonna get a deeper stretch with keeping some of that, hugging in some of that muscular engagement. This helps to protect your hamstrings. And then come back up. If you remove the blocks, regain them, and tuck your left leg back. So now we're going to come into stretching and lengthening through the hip flexor muscles. So stretching and strengthening hip flexors. Bring your right foot forward, left leg back, and then in any amount that feels right to you, you'll kind of lengthen and scooch the back foot back. So coming into this low lunge with your hands still on blocks. This might feel like plenty already, right? And before we do anything else, I invite you to think of dragging from your knee all the way up into your left hip toward your pelvis. Find a little engagement there, and then let go a little bit. Awesome. And then you're gonna hug in again. A lot of engagement, and then let go of some of it and try to sink down in deeper. If for your next couple breaths you want to deepen the stretch, you could bend the knee, reach back, clasp the top of the foot, and come into a deeper quad stretch. Deeper quad, and those quads are part of the hip flexor system, but all the hip flexors are getting stretched here. Okay, and then poof, we're going to switch sides. So you choose how. I'm going to step my left foot forward and then bring the right foot back. So same thing here, walk your right foot back. I'm coming as deep as feels appropriate in that stretch. Now you're going to hug in with your right knee up toward your right hip, finding some engagement, and then you'll extend it out again. One more time like that, you'll drag in, finding some muscular engagement, and then you'll stretch it out again. Okay, and keeping on some of that engagement, you might deepen the stretch by bending your right knee and lifting it up, then coming into perhaps a deeper stretch of all the hip flexors, front of your right thigh. And then you'll release. And this time, tuck your left leg back. Sit back on your heels. So now we want to keep that same kind of hugging in action from front and back as we work our way into splits, into Hanumanasana. Part of this involves not letting the back hip turn open. We want to keep the hips, both sides of the pelvis, pointing more or less forward. Another good way to gauge that is that you want all 5 toes on the back foot to be still touching the floor. So let's do this. Right foot forward, left leg back. And from here, shift back, flex your right foot, getting yourself into position. I even like to curl the toes under on the back foot, and this really helps to ensure that you're not letting the back hip turn open. So little by little, you'll slide your right foot forward and walk the back leg back. Hug in towards your hips. So dragging right heel back and dragging from left knee all the way into your left hip. Then you'll let go a little bit and see if you can sink down a little bit deeper, and so on and so forth. At some point, you might ditch the blocks if you're getting close enough to the floor. Now, I sometimes can get all the way down to the floor, right? And I probably could get down to the floor right now, but because I haven't done a lot of warming up, I'm gonna stick right here because I can still feel that my muscles are able to engage, and I know that I'm protecting my hips here. So one more breath. And then I'm gonna think of that dragging in from front and back leg in order to come out. Tuck the right leg back, regain the blocks, and second side, left leg forward. I'm going to curl my right toes under and back because, again, this helps to make sure that the back hip isn't turning open. And then I'm going to take it slow, crawling left foot forward, right knee back, and then hugging in, dragging left heel toward left hip, dragging right knee toward right hip, and then letting go a little bit further, so on and so forth, maybe a couple more times until you get to a place where you feel like you're down in a good depth of stretch, but you still have some muscular engagement. This helps to protect your hamstrings, all of the muscles that surround the hips, really. Also helps protect your low back. I'm just going to pause here for a couple breaths, still a little bit up away from the floor here in order to make sure I have that muscular engagement. And I'm going to drag my legs toward one another. Whoop. Tuck my left leg back. And that's it. Those are my tips for splits, Hanumanasana, and I really hope that they help.